Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Heather. Morning.
Morning. Welcome to Conversations with Heather Smith Commercial. Really pleased to have you here today. Thank you for wending your way east on the District Line.
No, amazing. Slow but good.
It was a bit slow this morning, wasn't it? It was. But here at last.
So I'm Vanessa Clark. I'm managing partner of Chase Sinclair Clark, and I set up on my own initially as Sinclair Clark, and then last October, but a year ago, bought Chase and Partners, Professor Graham Chase, and acquired a business partner, James Clark, who works alongside me, and we're now moving to develop the business, but still with a little bit of sole trader view in mind, and certainly, picking up from the corporate experience prior to Sinclair Clark, that's worked really well. So,
how long were you just Sinclair Clark? How long have you been doing that?
So I came out of Jones Lang. I was 5 years there, and so I was 12 years as Sinclair Clark, and it was a learning curve, jumping out of a corporate into a sole trading position. It's very different to being employed. But interesting.
I empathise with that.
You absolutely know how that works.
Yeah. And where do you do your work in the commercial property sector?
So commercially, really, when I initially started off in property, I was an industrial agent at a time where I was probably the only female in the southeast doing that at one point, and then developed my role, came to London and worked my way up. And so really I became an office agent, but I've always been really interested in diversifying, not being boxed into one particular thing, looking for opportunities, being flexible, learning on my feet, and dealing with complexities. I like things that need a solution. So that I find that challenging, and I find it very stimulating as well, to work through something and think you can resolve an issue for someone and make their world better at the same time, and find solutions that perhaps other people haven't been able to find.
So you don't just do your agency in the sort of very put a board up sense. You create opportunity and create sites and put sites together, and a bit more on the development agency side.
I do, and I create relationships that way. Dipping in when I was at James Lang, I very much got into MIPIN, and I dipped into that environment. And when I went out on my own, I thought I should stretch myself and keep doing that, which I did. And I won my first big site down in Kent, using contacts made at MIPIN, and actually I'm still working on it with a Terrace Hill client who's now Urban and Civic, and working on very unusual things at the moment. We're looking at leisure, looking at builders merchants and trade counters. So I'm not a boxed office agent, and I tend to come at things differently, look behind, look at the detail, try and research where's your opportunity. If it's a letting, where is your letting market? How can you uncover that from expiries and breaks? If you look at stacking plans of buildings. Yeah. And again, I find that fascinating because you get a picture moving ahead, and it means you can add so much more value for a client.
It's like bleeding into the asset management of it. And,
it actually is. Yeah. And I think that it's a very interesting role. I'm not sure I'd ever want to be a pure asset manager, but I think as agents very often we need to adopt that hat to make an instruction work better, and to achieve success and a result more quickly perhaps, and also think some of the thought process of the client. It's almost as if you're in empathy with them when you're looking at something, and you can give them what they need to make it work for them as well. And actually that just makes you more valuable, and you win more work as a result, definitely. I think the sole trader aspect is really interesting, because that in itself is a huge learning curve. And I think, looking at what you're doing, Heather, which is exceptional, and you've grown so much in the years you set out from those days when you were a corporate, and likewise. I think the ability to diversify, look at new aspects that are coming into the marketplace, and bring them into your advice pattern with clients. Think outside the box, go the extra mile. I think when you're working for yourself, it's incredibly motivating, and you've got to carry different problems, haven't you?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's something that I really enjoy. And actually looking back, I always, even when I was in a corporate, I was quite a kind of maverick space in terms of always seeing things around the corner and wanting to do things slightly differently. So actually coming in, when I set up my business, it's nearly 15 years ago, we set up Heather Smith and Culture. It felt quite natural actually, because I enjoyed like learning how to, bookkeep, marketing, make a website, all of those things that you do and have to do on top of your kind of day job. Actually, that now is the stuff that I really enjoy having a whole picture on. And actually, looking back, I definitely was like looking around the corner and trying to do other things. And I think it's either inside you or it's not. I mean, people do venture out, but I think the people who do it well, like your good self, it's natural. It feels a bit more natural.
I think there are a couple of aspects there which are really interesting. The ability to build up contacts as you're shaping a company, and the ability to look beyond just your industry. We were talking earlier about how embracing other inputs into the business is really important. I mean, we're all having to learn about smart buildings, about Wi-Fi without wayleaves, thank God, because what a nightmare that is. About, unusual and more progressive marketing, doing things in a different way, being a bit more nimble on your feet. And it's really important to embrace those new aspects that can come into the industry and actually help our clients to benefit from those.
Yeah, it's exactly why we have these conversations with people. Yeah. To kind of, obviously, some people are surveyors, some people are not. You're not a surveyor. We'll come on to that in a minute. But but you do surveying. I shouldn't say you're not a surveyor, because you've got more stripes than all of us put together, Vanessa. You're not RACS, and actually I think it's really important, and that's one of the reasons why we do this, is to kind of say that you don't have to be accredited to the institution to be so successful in this wonderful sector, and you don't have to be, right at the coalface doing evaluation or whatever has to be accredited to actually have a huge impact on progress and change in commercial property.
Absolutely. I think for decades, actually, agents, pure agents, have not always needed to be qualified. I have a postgraduate degree in property law and valuation, and I've got years of experience. So putting those together, there's no reason why somebody who isn't qualified cannot have as good an understanding of legislation and of all the criteria that comes into our work. And actually, if you're well-based, you've been well-trained and you've got a keen knowledge, you should look at things inquisitively, back to the basics that drive, every aspect of property. How do we put a rental value or a freehold value on a property? And it's not about valuation or valuation for lending. It's about understanding the marketplace, the criteria, the physicality of the product that you're looking at and trying to analyse. And I think, there's a lot of hope out there for guys and girls coming through the industry, for them to develop without having to be RICS qualified. And actually, you can go back to it at another stage. And I know now that, at any point I want to, I can go through and convert with the legacy of experience that I've got. But at the moment, for me, I'm so focused on driving this business forward, and actually, always improving the client base, project base, and diversifying. Because I think our world is not easy at the moment, for agents and for corporates out there. We live in very challenging times on so many levels, and we need to be, nimble and, always thinking outside the box. Very much.
I agree. What are the challenges that are coming up for you in terms of the space, in terms of trying to get that business with new clients, like the new MIPIM? Are you still doing MIPIM? Is that how you're still getting work? Or?
So the last year, actually, we haven't touched on COVID, because that was a really surreal situation. And during that time, none of us went to MIPIM anyway. And I've rather parked that at the moment, because I've benefited from it in the past hugely. Those benefits are still there. I'm still working on projects. I also think, through time, you build up repeat work with clients, and you find there's probably a niche of core clients. I call them core clients because I do repeat work for them all the time. And a number of those clients may not just be in the industries I started off looking at. So I'm doing educational work, industrial work, leisure work. I do a lot of development work. And it's ducking and diving around all of those aspects, really.
And you see the opportunities and you take it to people.
Absolutely. I think, and I always remember years and years and years ago, a colleague when I was in my Clive Lewis days, and we jumped into Erdman Lewis, colleagues standing up and presenting and saying, you should get 5 out of one project, you should get 5 instructions. Are you looking at, what's the professional side of it? Is there a lease renewal you can do? Is there a rent review? Is there an investment aspect you can look at? Is there a building surveying aspect you can introduce that? So I always try and look at it on a multifaceted level.
Selling is what it used to be
So
called.
brilliant.
Yeah.
And, and it works really readily. And sometimes, if you're specialising, so a while ago, and particularly when I was at Jones Lang, I specialised in Thames Gateway, East London. I was based at Canary Wharf at that time, working with Andrew Gould, who was the CEO, and I absolutely loved it because it was breaking new ground. Investors didn't understand it. Look at Greenwich Peninsula now, look at Stratford, look at Canning Town, it's magical. And I also developed Croydon and South London. And I sit on a board of Develop Croydon, and I spend a huge amount of time with core clients down there. I do a lot of work for Freshwater, and I'm always meeting, an inquiry comes in, and all of a sudden, look, we've got this to sell, or we need advice there on getting out of our lease, and then can we agree something there? And also, do you have this? Can we look at that? And all of a sudden, out of one meeting, you're getting a strand of instructions. And that, to me, is a great day.
You are a true agent, Vanessa, because just talking about it gives you so much light and energy.
It does. I love it.
I love that. You can't buy that. You can't train for that. That's just what's inside you.
It's interesting, though, because I think sometimes in our business, we're psychologists, aren't we? Let's be honest. We're trying to second guess an awful lot of the time. We're trying to manage differing characters. I always think it's interesting to sit back in a meeting and look at the people you've got in front of you. I'm very enthusiastic, probably overly so. My colleague James is incredibly considered and analytical. When you get clients who are much more analytical, throwing someone like me at them is quite difficult. And I remember one client actually recoiling when I was talking to him. Like, we can do this, and I really want to do that. Let's explore this. And he'd be moving backwards in his seat. And I had a lot of corporate training at JLL, which was brilliant. And, you realise different characters need a different approach. And I've learned, I think, and you're exactly the same, Heather, over a period of time, you realise you've got to, if you want to get the best out of a situation, you've got to work within the characters you've got in front of you and work with their need. So adjust.
You're never going to be everybody's cup of tea. No. Also, it takes a while, I think, to realise that, because it's terribly offensive sometimes, isn't it? When you're just like, gosh, they'd rather deal with this other person than me. Whereas actually, over time and age, you're just a bit like, actually.
I think that's life. You have to be able to adapt to that and deal with that. But I actually think the life skills we've learned over a period of time in our industry are amazing. I think the other thing is our industry, still think is amazing. It's friendly, it's courteous, it's professional. And I've got some of my longest standing friends out of colleagues and clients in the industry. And, and that for me is really important as well. Because how wonderful is it? You can enjoy your job.
Yes.
I enjoy my job.
Gift, isn't
even
it?
with all the pressures.
Yeah. I've known you, obviously, all my working life. And I've always admired the way you do your work. And you were at Jones Lang when I started at Weatherall's a long time ago.
Indeed.
But I really got to know you properly when the Sole Traders Club was formed, when I was doing Heather Smith Commercial and you had just formed Sinclair Clark.
Yeah.
And I was heavily pregnant. And we had that first lunch with kind of 12 of us. And it's still going on now, and it's a huge support network. Can you just explain a little bit what it means to you to be part of that? Because we are still in it, even though we've got people that we employ.
we are indeed, and at that point in time, it was very new to you and I. You were a couple of years before me in setting up. I jumped out of another corporate, Stars Hab Williams, and at that point, I actually moved in with colleagues who were in Conduit Street, and it's a group of friends whom I'm now with as part of the Property Hub.
Yeah.
So the Property Hub really developed at the time I set up Sinclair Clark. So that was back in 2010. And it was seasoned individuals like Robin Farmer, Martin Burke and people like that. And we had almost like a family working platform. It worked socially, it worked as a work support system. And to this day now, I'm a co-director of Property Hub, which we developed into a subletting desk situation and very much as a platform. So we rescued individuals in the industry and helped them. So sole traders, in a way, I felt was in a similar mold to that, except it wasn't people I was actually residing with in my day-to-day office. It was colleagues in the industry who were in a similar position. And I think from our perspective and actually growing from that, I remember very early on in sole traders, questions flying about. We need an accountant.
Yeah.
Who's the best accountant? Or we need a PI policy. What's your experience on, insurance provisions? Use classes order. Have you had any experience of changing use? And how do we go about that? And have we got? And it was looking at how, what's your take on the market at the moment? And are you looking for this? Can you provide that? And actually, the workflow and the collegiate atmosphere of that I think has grown and it's kept going. And I think that we're still the 12 or so members we were, Heather, but the Sole Traders Club for individuals in this market, maybe considering a jump out of a corporate, it could be such a useful platform. And I think very often in the past we've talked about the soft touch of the Sole Traders Club. And I'm involved in another club, and I think there's some synergy between that club and ours, and that's a club with Roger Wadhams, and it's called the Development Agents Club Dealers, and we have a bi-monthly gathering at 8 Nothing Button, Kingley Street. It's sponsored.
You can have everyone flocking now.
I know. We can book it. I know. Oh, as if I do that. But 1 to 4, it's networking. 4 to 6, it's my colleagues. Lots of them musicians, and it's music for 2 hours. So you mix the intense and the serious, and the what are you selling? Can I buy? What are you doing? What's the interaction between us? And let's have a drink and let's socialise with some sponsorship. In Sole Traders Club, I don't think we quite got to that stage yet, but I think that could develop very readily. We've got great members already. Some industry names within the Sole Traders Club, and I suppose in reality we're not exactly sole traders really.
No.
Because we're the Sole Traders Club membership has evolved, so over a period of time we've all grown, but it's really interesting that overlap in the industry. I still will reach out to Sole Traders colleagues to do deals with them in the industry.
Ian Pearson has just helped me with a rent review.
And he's an ex-hubby. He was based with us in the Property Hub, and I liaise with him. Damien Lambourne is another amazing guy. I do lots of engagement with him and interaction over his instructions and my instructions and our respective acquisitions. And there's a sea of people there. I think this could develop much more, and I would love to reach out to other professionals in the industry who are looking for a support system, because it's actually just a very amazing social and professional platform from which to grow.
I found it just really helpful to just kind of, blow the steam off in terms of, how much time did everyone spend on like the admin of things, like in the early days when it was just like me doing it on my own, literally on my own at the very beginning. Like, should I be just spending this much time and effort on this? Is this the right thing to do? Do I outsource this, or do I try and do it internally? Or I have the skill set, I'm going to give it a go. And I just think it just kind of gives a little bit of like framing to what you're trying to do yourself. And it might be that someone's trying to do a rent review practice or a professional practice piece of work, and I'm obviously doing agency and marketing and consultancy. But obviously I think it's just really nice to have that environment, and it was very welcoming, and it was very welcomed for me at the time. Like I said, I was like, I was kind of a year or 2 years into it. I was heavily pregnant. And I remember someone who will remain nameless saying to me, sitting next to me, and he basically said, "Oh, you won't be back to the next one, will you? Because you're going to have a baby." And I was just like, I'll be back in 5 weeks, actually. We're going to carry on.
Heather, when I was first pregnant with my daughter, I was back in the office in 5 weeks, and I was working at Clive Lewis at that
You
point.
were my inspiration.
And I was in there with Harriet in a bag on my, just going, right, okay, secretaries, would you mind very much? Just hold this one. I'll go and do that meeting. I'll be back. And that's how we did it. And in fact, my waters broke in the office, which is probably way too much detail for people. But and there was a news piece around it, industrial shed shifter. It was all about shed shifting the baby. Oh, anyway, so there was a lot of comedy around it. But,
when all the gossip was on the back page of the Property Week.
It was, totally. I've still got the news piece on it. And you've done the same thing. You've juggled a family and you've, you know the pressures that are on you and what you need to do. And again, I think it's, we're a safe pair of hands in a way, aren't we? And I think a lot of our colleagues in sole traders are likewise. And how amazing is it to have a completely trusted opinion you can go to and you're going to get a straight answer and as much help and support as you need. If I haven't got the answer, I'll know someone who's got the answer. And I think sometimes, for people, it's daunting for someone coming out of a paid situation, with not a 9 to 5, it's probably an 8 to 8 job or whatever the hours are.
A regular salary,
and that protection around you, but maybe having a lot more to offer, because actually jumping out of that situation, I think you discover what really the depths of your character, because it stretches you to in every angle, doesn't it?
Yeah, and in my experience, when I set up my business, it wasn't by design. It was because I was made redundant from a large practice, because that was that time when it was all going on, and the whole team had been decimated almost. So it wasn't necessarily by design, but when you realise that you have support of clients and you have support of people and colleagues and people in the industry and my family, I'm surrounded by business owners and people who run businesses, and so it wasn't completely alien, but perhaps for others it might be, whereas actually doesn't mean that they don't have the skill set. I think also I'd love to say that you're not obliged to join the Sole Traders Club and stay for 12 or 15 years. You can just pop in, find out what you want to find out, and then you can go again. You don't have to stay for...
No, and actually there's a social element. So we try and get together for lunches, and we're due to hold one quite soon. And I think actually stretching our colleague inclusion boundaries would be really good. And going back to the Dealers Club, there's also an overlap there. I mean, I work at the moment, I've always tried to help grads. So when I was at Jones Lang, I had 4 grads I work with, and they're all absolutely flying. And I'm like a proud parent, looking back at them, looking what they're doing now. And I think likewise at the moment, I'll help, colleagues of James who got to write a CV. And because again, we've all had to review CVs, and we can tell what works and what doesn't work, and how succinct you need to be, and how it needs, the information that's required to actually get you to it. When I was back in Jones Lang, I think they were looking at 1,000 CVs a week, and you've got to be seen, haven't you? Yeah. So if you're someone, aspiring to a corporate or doing whatever, or even, giving a CV to a client, because that's another aspect, isn't it? What's your CV? What's your resume? Have you got testimonials? How does that work? And again, I love to get feedback from clients, and that's all on I put that on the website. So if a client's looking at us as an entity, they can go and look at that. They can see all the associations like Sole Traders Club, Property Hub, Develop Croydon, and that feedback in the industry and to clients is really important. So how can we take sole traders further? Heather, we need to spend some more time on this.
Yeah, we'll have to think about that. Maybe over a little lunch, Vanessa.
And a glass. I think that would be very important.
I think we should definitely do that, but also I think we need to find a place where people can find us, because I think the truth is probably people maybe didn't know it existed, because it's wonderfully relaxed. It's wonderfully relaxed but very informative, but I think probably we do need to be able to, we need to be searchable. Things are often... these days we need to bring ourselves into the way that maybe
social media.
And I think we need to be available for people. So it's perhaps something that all the current people who attend the lunches and the drinks and are part of this lovely little tiny, it's not tiny, but this really impactful but small group, are kind of raise their flags a bit to say this is what we're part of, and we can be this resource for people.
Yeah. I think that's something we can develop.
Yeah.
I think it's an action point to take as well,
Yeah.
take away. We can look at that.
This
Probably
is why you're so good, because it's like, let's do this.
do it, action it, and let's put it on our website.
Yeah.
You've got a website, I've got a website.
let's do
you
that.
do Instagram, I do Instagram.
Yeah.
Look at. I know you've got a colleague who advises on social media. I
Yes.
wish I had one. And I would like to develop that side of things, and then. Possibly we can reach out with that on, we could build up a membership base of interest, work with people who are looking and make some time available. It doesn't always have to be in working hours. It can be a little bit either end.
Exactly.
You're a member of Soho House, Heather, and I love this because I actually like visiting you because I always know I'm going to go to a Soho House.
Somewhere different.
I know, but it's a great atmosphere, and it's a creative atmosphere. I can see why this works as an entity, and it's always so well presented. So many amenities, and always in useful areas. I mean, we're in Shoreditch today, and it's another. As you go further out of your comfort zone, at some points, Box Park is here. There's a Box Park in Croydon.
Yeah.
It's an incredible comparison.
Yeah.
And it's actually fascinating to see and just enjoyable to be here.
I'm really inspired by my physical environment, and so I really enjoy coming to different spots and places, and working in different places as well. Doing different work in different spots as well. It depends on the nature of the work you're doing. It doesn't always work working here as a chatty agent on the telephone, but for me, I kind of quite like that I am. Because you can't use your phones, if anyone didn't know. But I quite like being forced to put it down, turn it off, and do some other sorts of work, actually, because I don't naturally go to the work that I am forced to do when I'm here. So it's all a bonus, I think, for me.
I think that's a really strong point, because the other thing is, how much time do we set aside to actually think?
Yeah.
That light bulb moment, when you sat back and you may be grappling with a problem and lots of pressure on you, but to actually switch off for just a little bit, I do it so rarely.
Yeah.
But usually for me, it's in the early hours of the morning. I'm the worst, and I'll sort of shoot off an email then think, oh, no, I shouldn't have done that. 3 a.m. Does anyone really want to hear from me? Probably not. But that moment to think and actually think through a problem, and then maybe reach out to our colleagues and just
agree.
say, well, have you had to deal with this problem?
What's your take on it? Share it.
Again, as we developed, and we were talking earlier about specification and how landlords are presenting properties more and more towards Cat A+. It raises a whole sort of host of other industry standards to look at, that again, that pool of information and expertise around us.
Problem shared, problem halved.
Absolutely.
So Vanessa, we're coming towards the end. Thank you so much for being.
Thank you for having me, Heather.
But before you go, I ask everyone I speak to the same or the similar question, and it is what is the first property deal, or what's your first seminal moment around property, and how has that changed or influenced how you do it now? So it's a bit of a big question, but there's no right or wrong answer.
It's a huge one. Yeah. So going back decades to when I started, I was working for Humberts at the time, and I was a raw geography graduate post graduation, and my first job was to look at a dwelling house in the Hampshire area, large house with lots of trees in the garden, and I had to map on plans a TPO approach to the trees in the curtilage of a dwelling house. And I think from that point on, I knew I didn't want to do residential. So
felt tips on paper type thing?
Yeah, it was pretty much. my father was a cartographic draftsman, so I think they had high expectations that I had his technical ability. It wasn't quite true, but I ended up working on the Taylor Woodrow estate, nursing estate in Southampton, and really from that point on, the engagement, the social atmosphere, the interaction, I became a shed agent at that point, and that's really my growth into property. So I spent years working on industrial estates and mapping out where the nearest bacon and egg cafe would be for breakfast. So and camaraderie, industrial agents, great fun, and it's developed over the decades since then. There are probably some quite interesting stories, but perhaps we'll have to do another podcast, Heather.
Do you think you want them on camera? No, not all of them. No.
Probably wouldn't go down too well at all.
Do you still do a bit of industrial work?
I do. So down in Kent, an instruction I won at Mippin many many years ago with Terrace Hill at the time. It was on a huge plot of land in Herne Bay, and the landowner was struggling to move forward with Canterbury and Kent. Another part of my aspect, I like working with local authorities, getting them on side, and so I introduced the whole area to Terrace Hill at the time, and they said, we love it, let's make an agreement. And we did, broke all the planning regime, and we put a Sainsbury's there, 100,000 square feet. And it sort of broke the back of the infrastructure needed to take that development forward. And I'm working on that to this day.
Amazing.
So 13 years on, I'm still working with Terrace Hill, who are now Urban and Civic. And, and that's a great part of our industry, isn't it? The relationships that we forge and keep going. And that is actually really special, like our relationship.
I know, exactly. Many years to come yet.
I hope so, Heather. And we will, we will talk again, won't we, about developing sole traders a little bit more and making it perhaps more immediately available so that people can see who's part of it, what we're doing, can reach out, particularly to those starting off and leaving corporates and looking to find their way. There's such a host of experience we can offer.
Yes, I feel like we need to say thank you and goodbye so that I can write it all down and take the jobs list away.
Thanks so much, Heather.
Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.